What's up, everybody? So, this first weekend of August of 2019, they kind of put a timestamp on it. We had the nice announcement for Space Marine stuff, specifically the Space Marine Codex, basically the second edition of the Space Marine Codex, um, announced for us is coming. And quite frankly, with that, we saw a host of some new Primera stuff as well as some interesting things on top of it, like Codex supplements and that jazz. So I just kind of want to go forth and give my thoughts, if you will, on what we're looking at here, insofar as what we know so far. I know it's kind of a repetitious thing to say, but what I mean is, looking at what we got going on here, insofar as the basic stuff that we know with the limited announcements we have. I was originally thinking, okay, I'll wait until we get a proper pre-order thing up and more information, but I can always do a secondary ramble after that, kind of a follow-up to this one. So before I get into the nuts and bolts of it, it's going to be a little bit long-winded. I'm going to try to address everything in this very basic sense. Um, so just bear with me, and at the end of it, share your thoughts. That way you don't accidentally say something that I bring up, like, oh, you forgot this. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. I probably will. But, watch through. Hopefully you enjoy and be part of the discussion. So, Space Marines. It's no doubt and no secret my favorite of the stuff in 40k. It's my jam. I like a lot of stuff in 40k, but Space Marines always kind of rise to the top for me. And they are the poster child for 40k, let's be honest. So, with this codex, we are getting essentially a whole bunch of Primera stuff, is basically what it is. We're getting Primera-sized special characters to join Marneus Calgar's rank as a Primera-sized guy. We are getting Primera units, brand new, as well as stuff that has come out up until this point, kind of getting put into the codex, shoved all in the codex in one area. So with that being said, I do like it, because I like Primaris. And the evolving of the Primaris Space Marine stuff, the units and stuff that they have access to, is really cool, because in their basic form, they were first announced to us with their limited selection of units. I could believe a chapter being formed around that, sure, but they felt like they would be very dedicated, specialized chapters, kind of almost to fulfill very specific roles, as in comparison to the more cosmopolitan, comprehensive standard Space Marine chapter that got reinforcements, because we know Primaris weren't just reinforcing chapters, but were also founded into their own chapters by Gulliman as well. So over the time, we saw more and more Primera stuff come out for them, kind of fleshing out their roles, giving them more answers to problems and the like. And now they truly do feel, especially with stuff coming out when this codex comes out, they truly do feel like a full-on self-contained chapter in their own right, even more so than they did. We still don't have a specific tech marine, at least not unless they announce something later on. We just have to kind of use our imagination and say, okay, they have them, we just don't have a unit for them. And part of that is playing-wise. If you give a Primaris Tech Marine similar equipment to the standard Tech Marine, well, why wouldn't you just go with the Primaris? And there's answers around that, such as giving the standard Astartes Tech Marine the servo harness only and whatever. But anyway, with all that said, I like all this Primaris fleshing out. I do know that people would like to see standard Space Marine stuff, and I just don't foresee that happening for two reasons. One, when they tend to give us new entry, a model or a unit comes along with it, and I just don't see anything new Astartes coming along for it. Now, of course, there's plenty of stuff out there in the range: Vanguard, Stern Guard, Tactical, Devastator, Assault, all that jazz, where you could easily build whatever squad they would theoretically make. I just don't see it happening, because they pretty much got everything covered and introduce yet another powered armored squad, unless it's some brand new weapon that we just haven't seen Space Marines wield, which probably wouldn't happen. I don't foresee a new squad coming. Also, to be frank, and I will probably address this in yet another kind of long-winded ramble in the future, Primaris are the evolution of Space Marines. I know people are always afraid whenever Primaris stuff gets brought up that, oh, it's going to replace Space Marines. We're going to lose all of our Space Marine squads. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this model style of Mark 10 armor and all that jazz, this stat line and this scale is the next step, not just in the fluff, in terms of Primaris and their upgrades and all that, but also in the collecting side. This is the next step for Space Marines. It's creeping in for us, but it really is the next step. And that doesn't mean we have to lose Devastators. It doesn't mean we have to lose Tactical Marines or Assault Marines or anything like that. It just means that those would cease to be standard Astartes and be a Primaris stat line with Primaris looking war gear. Now, there would be some changes, such as would we have standard Rhinos anymore? I would say they kind of a classic, and they are based on the Predator, what the Predator tank is based off of and stuff like that. Rhinos and Razorbacks are quintessential, so they'll probably get kind of bigulated in scale a little bit, and we can kind of see perhaps evidence of that in the new dedicated transport for the Primaris, the Impulsor. If you look at the Impulsor, especially the front half of it, it's very Rhino-esque in design and shape. I could definitely see that just basically being fleshed out a bit more Rhino-like. Get rid of all the hover stuff and the turbine engines, and you just flesh out the back half of that like a standard Rhino and give it tracks, and you would have a Rhino scaled up, if you will, to kind of go alongside this. Land Raiders, another quintessential thing. Terminators would have to be scaled up and given a whole new kit, I'm sure, but the point is, it wouldn't be the smoothest of transitions. There'd be some growing pains, but we wouldn't lose out on the core classic Space Marine thing that's been around for decades. We would have Tactical Marines. They would just be Primaris in scale, Primaris in stat line. Potentially, instead of a standard bolter, they would have the bolt rifle, right? We might see the death of the standard bolt gun for Space Marines in favor of a bolt rifle, which is a bigger bolt gun. But anyway, who knows? I don't have clear-cut, defined potential answers to that. My point is, just because Primaris are basically going to be taking over in terms of, if logically, fluff-wise, if we were to progress the timeline 1,000 years forward in 40K's timeline, it doesn't mean we're seeing the death of Space Marines. They're still Space Marines, and we're still going to have the quintessential squads that we know of. That's not going to go anywhere. And I say that with some confidence because GW is no fool. They understand their poster child and their moneymakers in that regard. And, basically giving us true scaled Space Marine kits for everything is just going to be a smart move when the time comes for that. So, I know people always get humdrum about that. I'm sure people will comment about, oh, it's blasphemy, that sucks, whatever. Look, take a Space Marine from Space Crusade in the early days of plastic Space Marines and put it next to a Tactical Marine, a Devastator, or a Stern Guard, or a Deathwatch Marine now, and you're going to see a very clear and present difference in quality and size and everything. Take the old pewter little Death Rocks, Dreadnoughts. I call them Death Rocks because they're small but heavy. Put them next to a current non-Primaris Redemptor Dreadnought, just a standard Dreadnought, and you're going to see a size difference, clear and present. So, it's nothing new. It's just that we have a whole new terminology coined with it and stat line to go alongside of it. And to be honest, Devastators and Tactical and all that with that stat line are not overpowered unfair things. So I really don't foresee them going anywhere. Perhaps the squad's changing a bit insofar as instead of bolt guns, bolt rifles and the like. But really, I honestly think that is the route we will eventually see. The thing is, GW is doing their best to let us have our cake and eat it too, meaning not do that yet. I'm sure they are aware that is basically the progression they're going, because everything that's new is Primaris, which would make sense if you go on that route. Plus, they're making special characters into Primaris now. So to address that, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I'll get back to the Codex and the Primaris specific new stuff in question and the supplements, hence a bit of a long-winded ramble. Why make special characters into Primaris? Well, it's because these special characters have been identified and cemented and core and integral to the codices, right? Not obviously this is just for one Space Marine Codex, but Azrael never got replaced as the Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels. You know, Logan, Grimnar, and Dante are still in their respective positions. Is it perhaps a bit more realistic and believable to have somebody die off and get replaced? Yeah, it is. In the realm of the Dark Angels, if it would be a real moot point, and it's kind of the same thing for the Ultramarines and the Blood Angels, and perhaps even the Space Wolves, is that the certain special characters in key positions are equipped almost ritualistically, right? The leader of the Deathwing, for example, Belial, is equipped the way any Deathwing leader would be equipped. Just change names, same dude. Azrael, basically the same thing. Dante, same thing, and so on. So it really would just be a name change, a virtually identical model, just Primaris in the case of Marneus Calgar, or the ones that they did do thus far. So that would be a bit of a cop-out in people's eyes, even though it would be completely legitimate and makes sense. Also, we haven't really seen true changes of the Guard insofar as what we see in the past, right? In the past, we've had special characters die off and be gone and then get replaced. Chaplain Xavier. If you don't know who he is, he was a Salamander special character chaplain. He was gone. They got rid of him, and then in 5th we got Vulcan Heston for Salamanders because Xavier died in the fluff. Captain Cortez of the Crimson Fists went missing. He went away, and eventually we got Pedro Cantor. Lysander went through an evolution from being, I think, just a sergeant upgrade to becoming a Terminator and all that. But anyways, my point is, the only character that I think we truly have in Space Marine lore in the Codex as a special character entry that is dead still is Taicho. I don't foresee him going anywhere, unfortunately, even though it makes sense. He's been dead for many an edition now. Moria the Chosen, a Death Company special character Dreadnought, basically replaced by the generic Death Company Dreadnoughts, but it'd be cool to see him make a return, because I don't know if he was destroyed ever. Just kind of faded away as we got Death Company Dreadnoughts kind of just as a thing. So anyways, my point is, they haven't done that for several editions. Not just with Space Marines, but with other forces as well. Eldrad was dead, but not dead, but kind of dead, but it's kind of back, and maybe was dead, but it's back. You have stuff like that. So, heck, Tau, with their lifespan, you'd think you'd be getting, having a relatively short lifespan in comparison to the myriad of demigods of battle in 40k. We still have Farsight, we still have Shadow Sun, we still have the Ethereals. So, I mean, they just don't. It's just suspension of disbelief there, because established characters type of situation. So that's why instead of introducing a Primaris Librarian special character for the Ultramarines, they're just turning Tigerius into a Primaris guy. Is it quote-unquote lazy writing, if you were going to look at it that way insofar as a video game or novel or whatever? A little. But they're established iconic characters that aren't going anywhere. So they're getting Primarisized, and we're seeing this kind of creep around because this is slowly going to be, like I said, I feel what takes over, but doesn't mean we're losing iconic things. I don't wish to harp so much on that in this ramble because I want to cover everything that was announced in the first weekend of August. So I will come back to the whole idea of Primaris and the evolution of Astartes and all that. But yeah, we have Tigerius of the Ultramarines. He's the chief librarian, or Tigris, however you want to pronounce this, or Tigerius. I say Tigerius because it's easier for me. And then we have Corsaro Khan of the White Scars. Now, the unfortunate part of the White Scars one is he looks cool. I do like him, but I haven't double checked in in the current Space Marine Codex until we get this new one. But I do know in editions prior, he did have a bike option, I believe, and I'm very much certain that's gone now for him. But he does look cool. So that is one of those kind of things, is that when we eventually go full on Primaris, will we lose bike squads, and what would that mean for things like the Y Scars and the Raven Wing? And I don't think we will. I think we'll just see Primaris sized versions in the future. But again, all this stuff is kind of wishful thinking and or wishful doomsaying for the future, because GW isn't going to just do this in the next year or so. It's going to take time. So I really don't foresee huge changes coming until we get to 9th edition, if they ever do a 9th edition, or if they kind of Age of Sigmar 40k and redo everything. Maybe then we'll see it. But anyways, so that's the we have Primaris special characters in the form of Tigerius and Corsaro Khan. Does this mean that others might be coming soon? Perhaps. The two that I foresee of being particularly of issue would be Lysander and Kaivan Shrike. Because Shrike's basically an Assault Marine chapter master, right? He's got a jump pack, Twin Lightning Claw. And we don't have a squad quite like him to lead. Like, he can lead assault squads or Vanguard veteran or whatever. Unless they introduce a whole new special unit type of thing of Primaris in future reveals or whatever, I don't know how he wouldn't. It'd be a bit weird. It would be a little clunky. The new model would Mark 10-ified, but then what do you do with the jump pack? And he's not like Inceptors or the like, so what's the deal there? That would be a little clunky, and Lysander is in Terminator armor, so what would that mean? So I'm sure those are probably the far in the future scenarios for being converted to Primaris and new models for that. But I'm sure they'll work on it, they'll think about it, and I'm sure the end result will be cool, because thus far the models have been pretty cool. So we're also seeing a universal update for Astartes, period. Shock Assault. This rule, it's interesting. And it's for Astartes. This means Grey Knights, Death Watch, Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Heretic Astartes, Chaos Space Marines, Death Guard, Thousand Suns, and the like. All things Astartes will have Shock Assault. They've come out and said that. So that's pretty cool. This is part of a catch-all term for Loyalist Astartes called Angels of Death, it would seem. I don't know if that's going to spread also, but basically Shock Assault is this new thing they kind of introduced. And so it's not just Imperial Space Marines, it's not just Space Marine Codex, it's all things Astartes, hence, like I said, Grey Knights, Death Watch, and the like. Now, what I do think is definitely going to need some clarification, and they did kind of make, I think, a change to one of their posts. I think they might have said something in error because I can't find it, but I won't bring it up because I can't find it. But they're basically stating that contained herein in this codex, you'll be able to use the full spectrum of units available to the Astartes, even if you're a Blood Angels, Space Wolves, or Dark Angels player. Basically saying, if you want to use the new stuff in this codex, you need to buy this codex if you're one of those three. I'm assuming, but we won't know, that Death Watch is also included, because Death Watch have access to Primaris units. We'll have to wait and see. This is going to be a little clunky because they're going to need some real clarification here. Because when you say full spectrum, does that mean Thunderfire cannons? Does that mean Centurion squads? Not that I would ever want one, but what exactly is the limitation or no limitation, and what would that mean for these three codices and Death Watch, I guess? Because Space Wolves don't follow the Codex Astartes. The reason the Space Wolves have what they have is that they march to the beat of their own drum. They basically haven't changed their ways since they were a legion, you could more or less say. So why would they all of a sudden have Tactical Squad, if you can take that? Why would they have a Thunderfire cannon or things like that? They have their Grey Hunters, their Longfangs, and the like. They're very much that way. So is it specifically for Primaris? Because that's what it sounded like initially, and then when I reread it, I'm like, okay, maybe they are referring to more than just the Primaris. And that's kind of what they looks like they've taken out of one of their more recent postings, was something in regards to that, it seems. So we'll have to wait and see. This is a little clunky. This is kind of harkening back to earlier editions of 40k, where you would have multiple books to represent a force. There was a time before Dark Angels and Blood Angels got their own true blue standalone codices that they had this little dozen page or so big codex, as they were called, that required the standard Space Marine Codex to build off of. So I'm kind of harkening back to that a little bit here, and what really would be the telling factor is what the future brings. Because if this is just the way they're going to do it, I'm okay with that, right? Yes, that means you have to buy a book, and now using 2 books and it's a little clunky, like I mentioned, which is what they were trying to go away from in some of the previous editions. But if they never update Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels codices and reprint them and re-release them, then you just get this book and you're fine. Because if they were going to go the standard route, it would mean we wouldn't have, as Blood Angel, Space Wolves, or Dark Angel players, we wouldn't have access to these new units right away, and we have to wait for our codex to get re-updated and second edition of it coming out, and then we have to buy it anyway. Now, what will be a little bit of a kick in the nether regions is if they say, because what they're basically is stating is we need to purchase this book for all the new stuff. As a Dark Angel collector, if I want to play Dark Angels, all the fancy new Primaris, which I don't personally. I want to keep my Dark Angels just non-Primaris for ease of me. Then I would need this codex, which is fine. But if now a half a year goes by and they do second edition Blood Angel, Space Wolves, and Dark Angel stuff coming out with all of this stuff contained therein all nice and neatly, which would be the ideal way, then that's a little bit of a kick in the other regions because, well, you made us buy a book that some of these players wouldn't buy because not everybody collects a codex. So we'll have to see what happens there. But anyways, it is interesting though, because as it stands, if this is all they do and they don't update the other books because they don't have a reason to, truthfully, then that's great. You just get this book and you play a bunch of business. You have access to them right away if you want to use them. On that note, I did bring up the Impulsor, I believe. I think it's cool looking. I like it as a dedicated transport. I find very silly the Invictor Tactical War Suit. Not because it's stealthy, I can deal with sci-fi shenanigans that way. It's because twofold. A, it feels like they took the Redemptor Dreadnought chassis, ripped the sarcophagus out, and put a little pilot seat in its place, and gave it less armor. And B, why do we need to have a heavy bolter strapped to the hip, all like running gun style, where the warsuit's actually going to draw a weapon and fire? When the other hand or other arm is clearly a ranged weapon, why have this arbitrary heavy bolter, pistolized heavy bolter strapped to its hip to draw and shoot as if it was a person? Because it's not. It's a warsuit. That's a little silly to me. That should have just been integrated on that arm from the get-go. And if I were to build and collect one of these for my DIY force that I'm working on, or eventually we'll get to work on and test orange color schemes out on, I would very much convert it up so that weapon is perma attached to that arm, because I just find that silly. Not that it doesn't look cool. If it wasn't Space Marines, if like it's very anime-esque-ish. There we go. I don't know. It just, for me, it doesn't work in this context. I do like the overall design, not the fact that that it's a Redemptor, but this makes more sense to me as a warsuit. The Nemesis Dreadnought always felt, to me, a little cartoony. The Grey Knight's Nemesis Dreadnought thing. I believe that's what it's called. It just gave off a bit of a cartoon-ish vibe to me. I couldn't explain to you why. And this, to me, makes more sense. So the overall style choice of how they're doing it as a warsuit makes sense to me more so than what we got with the Grey Knight's suit that they got years ago. So I guess kudos there. Anyways, kind of the last thing to really touch upon is the supplemental books. With the launch of the Codex, we're having 2 supplements launch with it, I believe. The White Scars and the Ultramarines Codex supplement books. Yes, the Ultramarines, they actually have flavor. They're not just this dull, bland, flavorless chapter of which their shtick is being just a generic Codex. There actually is flavor to Ultramarines. This is, I don't know what we'll see in this book, but this is where we have a very real possibility of Tyrion Hunters coming back as a thing, for example. Although we'll have to wait and see what actually happens. It does sound like, well, first off, let me backpedal. There's 6 supplement books that they showed a picture of. 1 labeled Ultramarines, 5 redacted. We know one of them is also White Scar, so 4 redacted. This means that if you do your math, there are a total of 6 first founding forces in the standard Space Marine Codex. White Scars, Ultramarines are 2 of them, which means the other 4 are getting their own Codex supplement books. The way they kind of describe it is that the Codex is going to have, for example, Renee's Calgar in it, and whatever. But then so will the supplement book. I don't know. It's a little bit of a hazy descriptor for the supplement books, but either way, I don't think the Codex is they're going to take special characters out of the Codex and then put it in your supplement, because you have to wait for stuff like, I'm assuming, Raven Guard, Imperial Fist, and such to come out, and Iron Hands. So I don't think they're going to take away Shrike and Lysander just to give them back in the supplement book. It wouldn't make sense. If anything, they'll just get double printed for ease, which is no big thing. I don't know what's going to happen to the Iron Hands guy, though. We know the Iron Hands are getting an interesting Iron Father special character who looks awesome. We just don't know yet if he's going to be in the main Codex or if he's going to be part of the allure of purchasing the Iron Hands supplement book. We'll have to wait and see. But I think this is cool. I never minded Codex supplements. I thought they were an interesting concept, a way to kind of bring extra flavor for Force In, like when the Farsight Enclave had theirs. That was really cool. And when they had their short-lived one as well, was interesting. So I'm looking forward to see what they put for the Ultramarines, what they put for the White Scars, what the Raven, what they're all going to get. I would love to see a 7th, and I would love for that one to be Blood Ravens, because I think, you know, their legacy from Dawn of War and the legacy of that game series, they deserve to have a bit of a supplement for themselves, in my opinion. I know they have like a Warlord trait table or something, but come on. Codex supplement Blood Ravens would be sick, and I hope we get to see that. Anyways, I've gone on long with tangents everywhere, but my point is this. As a Space Marine fan, I'm looking forward to learning more about this. I'm looking forward to a 2nd edition of the Space Marine Codex. I like that Primaris now have a lot more fleshed out of a warband feel and units and the like. They feel not just like, okay, they can be a chapter, because they felt that way from the beginning, but now they feel like they're a chapter, and X chapter versus Y chapter of pure Primaris can really feel different. Perhaps one Primaris Space Marine chapter is heavy with the war suit, where another one is really heavy with Inceptors, and so on and so forth. I really hope for some clarification on exactly what the Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves can take from this Codex, and I feel whatever they're going to do is going to just be a little clunky compared to what people are used to, because again, basically from like 5th was doing this, but really 6th and 7th were all about, outside of some supplements, your Codex is all you need. You don't need a 2nd Codex. A supplement book, perhaps, and then they even went away from that. But you just needed your Codex, and that was it. So the fact that they're going back to needing 2 books to play for some forces could be a little clunky. All Grey Knights are getting, and the Heretic Star Chasers are getting, is just that rule, not getting anything else. So the Grey Knights are getting added to their rules, Shock Assault, and so are the Heretic Star Chase stuff, and so are, you know, Dark Angels, Blood Angels, and Space Wolves, and all that. So that's cool. My hope is a bit more of a common sense approach to Primaris and transports. They're getting a dedicated transport. That's great. The Impulsor, cool. They have their other vehicle, cool. They're not giants, right? They're not towering over Terminators, for example. You could say they're roughly on the same scale. Why can't, outside of just rules limiting this, there's no reason why they couldn't be in a Land Raider. There's no reason why they couldn't be in a Storm Raven, and so on. There's no reason they couldn't be in the Death Watch transport flyer either. My point is, I hope they reevaluate that. If they want them to not be in a standard Rhino, and that's why the Impulsor's here, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And therefore, no Razorback. But Land Raider, come on. It just feels like an unnecessary thing to limit them from. There's no real reasoning for it. So I'm hoping they reevaluate some of that stuff. And should be fun to learn more about it. I think upon pre-order weekend, I'll take a look at what else they make mention of and do a follow-up ramble for that. So anyways, share your thoughts if you made it through to the end of this really long ramble on a topic that I'm just going to rehash again and also do other rambles on Primaris specifically stuff too. Thanks very much for stopping by. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want to be part of future conversations here. Leave your thoughts on what was announced over the weekend thus far. Yes, this is going up basically on Monday, and I know there's a Monday announcement, but that was after this ramble, so yeah. Anyways, thanks very much for tuning in, and until the next one, take it easy.